1. Which of the following best represents a permanent product? So, what is a permanent product? A permanent product is the outcome or result of a behavior in which we don't have to actually observe the behavior to be able to measure it. Meaning we don't need to observe the behavior creating the product. We just need to be able to measure the product that exists as a result of the behavior. Okay. So answering this question, you need to think about the word permanent, right? The outcome of the behavior needs to be at least semi-permanent, if not completely permanent, right? So if it goes away quickly, the outcome of the behavior, we can't consider it a permanent product, okay? So let's look at our answer choices. A client engages in self-injury that leaves small red marks that fade quickly. Okay, this one is decent, right? Self-injury that leaves marks, right? If we're there quick enough, okay, we don't have to observe the self-injury. We can see the red marks. However, they fade quickly, okay? So they're not exactly permanent, right? So although this answer choice is okay, I don't know if it's the best one, right? We need to be sure this is our best choice before picking it. This is a good example of why you always read all your answer choices when you're taking the exam, okay? Because if there's not a better answer, then we can pick this one, even though it's not really that great. However, it's only the first answer choice. Let's read the rest, see if we can find a better one. After a task demand is presented, a client elopes from the table. This is definitely out, okay? You would actually have to observe the client eloping, okay, to measure that. You can't come back an hour later because you obviously won't be able to see the client eloping after this task demand, okay? So B is out. John emptied the dishwasher and swept the floor while his mom was at work. Yeah, could his mom come home after work and see the swept floor and see the empty dishwasher? Sure, right? That's a permanent product of the behavior. That's a result of the behavior that his mom can observe and measure without actually having seen John empty the dishwasher or sweep the floor. Okay, so C is much better and much stronger than A. So C is our answer. Let's look at D. Timmy raised his hand 4 times in class today in class. You would actually have to be in the class to observe that. So it's not permanent product. The only answer where you wouldn't have to observe the behavior and where the outcome is actually permanent, okay, is John emptying the dishwasher and sweeping the floor while his mom was at work. So C is our answer, okay? Remember, always read all your answer choices, okay? They want the best answer. So even if there are 1 or 2 that look good, you always want to pick the best answer. Bobby and Whitney are playing upstairs when their dad arrives home from a trip to the store. The dad instructs Bobby and Whitney to come downstairs and help with the groceries. After helping with the groceries, Dad gives Bobby and Whitney each a chocolate bar. Which of the following answer choices describes the antecedent to Bobby and Whitney coming down the stairs? Okay, this is a scenario question. A lot going on in this question. Okay, they could ask a lot of different things regarding the information in the question, but what they ask about is the antecedent to Bobby and Whitney coming down the stairs. What is an antecedent? Excuse me. An antecedent is what happens directly before the behavior, okay? And that's a key when you're answering these type of questions, right? You want to find the answer choice that happens as close to, if not directly before this behavior, okay? So the antecedent to Bobby and Whitney coming down the stairs, we want to find what happened right before they came down the stairs, okay? So let's look at our question again. Bobby and Whitney are playing upstairs, okay, when their dad arrives home from a trip to the store. Then what happens? The dad instructs Bobby and Whitney to come downstairs and help with the groceries, okay? So all of this happens before Bobby and Whitney coming down the stairs. But what happens directly before them coming down the stairs, okay? Bobby and Whitney are playing upstairs. Yes, that happens before Bobby and Whitney coming down the stairs. But is there something else that happens closer? Yeah, sure. Dad arriving home from the store, and even closer, Dad instructing Bobby and Whitney. So ideally, we're looking for one of these choices, okay? Dad comes home from the store, okay? So we're getting closer, right? Then Dad gives an instruction. Yes, right? This is the antecedent. Whatever happens directly before the behavior of interest, okay, is your antecedent. Again, don't be quick and don't be in a rush to pick answer choices, okay, because all three of these things happened before Bobby and Whitney coming down the stairs, but the actual antecedent, what happened directly before Bobby and Whitney coming down the stairs, is Dad giving an instruction. So our answer choice here is C, okay? Remember, understand what the question is asking, use the information provided, give the best answer by reading all of your answer choices. Okay, your BCBA gives you permission to teach the parents of your client about shaping behavior. Which of the following is not an example you should use when describing shaping? All right, so yes, typically RBTs don't train parents, right? But in this situation, you are instructed to inform your client about shaping. What is shaping? First things first, shaping is reinforcing approximations of a behavior until that behavior is achieved, right? So we are trying to create a new behavior by reinforcing smaller parts of that behavior. So this question wants to know which of the following is not an example. This means 3 of these will be examples of shaping, only 1 won't. You need to read the questions very carefully, okay? Be careful of these not and except questions. So which of the following is not an example of shaping? When teaching communication, reinforce sounds that are close to the word that you're trying to teach. This is exactly shaping, right? We're reinforcing sound approximations that are close to the word. So if we're trying to teach cat and our client says k or ka, we're going to reinforce those, right, until we get to cat, okay? So this is an example of shaping. B, now that the client cleans their room, provide reinforcement only occasionally. What's wrong with this one? Well, shaping, we're trying to teach the new behavior, okay? In this scenario, the client is engaged already in the behavior we want, right? They're cleaning their room. Also, we're not providing more reinforcement, okay? We're now starting to what? We're starting to fade reinforcement, right? We're only providing reinforcement occasionally, okay? So this is not an example of shaping, okay, for a couple of different reasons. B, looks like our answer. Read all the answer choices though. For handwriting, each time the client gets closer to writing the letter A, provide reinforcement. Again, good example of shaping. And then D, we want the client to complete 10 math problems. Provide reinforcement each time the client completes one more than before. Yes. So A, C, and D, all examples of shaping, all ways you can describe shaping. B is not our answer choice. When you're studying, okay, make sure you understand why your wrong answers are wrong, okay? That's going to make you stronger, okay, at your terms, at applying the definitions, okay? Your understanding will increase if you can explain why the wrong answers are incorrect. You and your friends record how many times your teacher uses the word so in her lecture. The first week you record 20 instances. The second week, you record 30 instances. Third week, you record 25 instances. In the fourth week, you record 25 instances. Okay, at what rate does the teacher use the word so? So, what is rate? Rate is frequency over time. So we have our frequency, right? We have 20, 30, 25, and 25. Based on our answer choices, we're looking in terms of per week. Remember, rate is frequency per time, okay? So something per week, something per day, something per hour. This question is asking per week. So at what rate does your teacher use the word so? To find that, you'll need to add up all your frequencies so you get total frequency, right? 20 plus 30 is 50. 50 plus 25 is 75. 75 plus 25 is 100. So we have 100 instances over how many weeks? 4 total weeks. 100 divided by 4, 25. Our teacher uses the word so 25 times per week. Okay, that's all rate is, right? Frequency, total frequency over time. And the time can be day, minute, session, week, whatever they give you, that's going to be your time. Okay, so again, our teacher uses the word so 25 times per week. Which of the following is false about the x-axis on a line graph? Okay, simple graphing question. Don't be intimidated by graphing questions, okay? What do we know about the x-axis? Try to answer this one before even reading answer choices. What do you know about the x-axis? The x-axis is the passage of time. The x-axis is horizontal. The x-axis is known as the abscissa, okay? So we need to look for what is false. Well, what do we just say, okay? Is the x-axis called the ordinate? No. What is the ordinate? It's the y-axis, okay? Boom. Very simple question, right? X-axis is the abscissa. It represents time. It is horizontal. This question, once you're ready to take the test, you should be able to answer this question 15, 20 seconds. Very simple question, very straightforward question, okay? The easy questions, answer them quickly, get them right quickly, move on, okay? So what's just following about the x-axis? It's called the ordinate. A year ago, when your client started receiving services, they expressed that they wanted to get a job as a baker. For the past year, you have worked and mastered the following skills: reading recipes, timing, measurements, and cleanup. Your client ended up getting a job at the bakery, but is unable to make accurate measurements at their job. Your client lacks what? Okay, so problem here, right? You worked a year with your client for all these skills, okay? You mastered these recipes and timings and measurements. They even got a job. So you're probably feeling pretty good about yourself. Unfortunately, they get to the bakery and they can't do what you worked on all those years, okay? That's an issue. Remember, one of the main components of our job is to what? To train generalization, okay? Your client not being able to execute these responses and behaviors outside of the learned environment is a lack of what? The lack of generalization, okay? It's not a lack of ability, right? One ability is more of a mentalism and a construct. We can't really measure it, but he's shown he can do those skills before. So he has the ability. It's not effort, right? Your client wanted this job. The motivation is there, right? So it's not motivation either. It has to be generalization. Your client can do it in home. You teach them in home. You failed to help the client generalize. So he gets to his new job and he can't execute, okay? That's a big problem. It's something we have to focus on when teaching our clients, okay, these skills. Johnny's mom tells you that no matter how hard they try, they cannot get Johnny to tie his shoes. They just don't know what to do anymore. During your next session, your BCBA offers Johnny 2 new video games, Johnny's largest reinforcer, if he ties his shoes. Johnny still cannot do it. Johnny's situation most likely represents a what? Okay, so it happens a lot where parents are just fed up. There's something they want their child to do, and they just can't seem to do it, okay? And a lot of times the parents are convinced that they just don't want to, okay? Or they can, or the motivation is not there, or this, that, and the other thing, okay? So in this situation, Johnny can't tie his shoes. Your BCBA says, okay, Johnny, I'll give you, your greatest desire, which is 2 new video games, right? So the strongest reinforcer possible, and Johnny still can't do it. So what is happening in Johnny's situation? Is this a performance problem, a skill deficit, a lack of motivation, or a punishment problem? Well, it's not a lack of motivation. The motivation is there. 2 new video games, Johnny's largest reinforcer. It's not a punishment problem. Okay, we're not punishing anything. So it's either going to be a performance problem or a skill deficit. A performance problem indicates the inability to perform a response or behavior in a situation. So you're able, okay, you have the skill, you have the ability to do the behavior or response. You just can't do it in certain situations. A skill deficit means you don't have the skill. You can't do the response no matter what. And that's what we're describing here with Johnny. He has a skill deficit. No matter what we do, as of right now, he can't tie his shoes, okay? And this is a good way to develop skill acquisition plans, identifying skills that can't be done. Now, if it was a performance problem, then Johnny has a better chance of tying his shoes when the reinforcer is present. But even then, Johnny can't do it. Johnny's lacking skill. Johnny has a skill deficit. Tina's brother has an intellectual disability. He is able to live on his own, but Tina helps him set up his house to make daily activities easier. For example, Tina puts labels on different drawers. The labels contained words like socks, shirts, and pants. What was Tina helping her brother with? All right, Tina's being a good sister, helping her brother identify what? Well, identify drawers for socks and shirts and pants. Okay. What is Tina trying to help him with? Is Tina trying to help him generalize? Not necessarily, right? She wants her brother to be able to put his clothes away at his own home. She's not helping him put his clothes away at other people's homes, right? It's his own home. So generalization is not really a factor here. Functional communication. Is there any communication going on from Tina's brother? No, he's reading these labels, okay, and putting his clothes away. Discrimination. What is discrimination? The ability to identify or tell the difference between two or more stimuli. That's what she's doing here, okay? Instead of just 3 drawers, these drawers now have labels. This is going to help her brother identify and discriminate between the drawers. So he now knows the sock drawer, the shirt drawer, the pant drawer. So Tina is helping her brother with discrimination. What about reinforcement schedules? There's no reinforcement schedule discussed in this question, so it is out. Our answer here is discrimination. Prompts can be used to effectively evoke desired behaviors. However, prompts should be faded as soon as possible. This is because why? Why do prompts need to be faded? One, we want to avoid prompt dependency, okay? Prompt dependency occurs when the person waits for or is unable to do a response or engage in a response or behavior without the prompt. So if we prompt too much, if we over prompt, we create this tendency for the client or the learner to wait for the prompt in order to evoke the behavior. Okay, so that's one. The second reason, okay, is because prompts are temporary SDs. You have to establish the actual SD. Remember, the prompt follows the SD, the discriminative stimuli, and that prompt for that moment becomes the SD. If you never fade the prompt becomes the permanent SD, which again leads to prompt dependency. You have to fade the prompt to establish the actual SD. That, of course, is our first answer choice, okay? So that looks great. Read all the answer choices. Prompts are motivating operations. No, prompts are not motivating operations. They are antecedents, but they are not motivating operations. Prompts are used only in extinction procedures. No, again, incorrect. Prompts are often used in skill acquisition procedures, okay? And prompts should be used as a last resort. No, prompts should be used early and often, right, to evoke the desired behavior. So the reason we're fading prompts as soon as possible is because they are temporary SDs. You need to establish the actual SD. Finally, which of the following reasons is a primary advantage of using incidental teaching over discrete trial teaching? Well, incidental teaching, of course, is what? Naturalistic teaching. So why would we use naturalistic teaching over discrete trial teaching? So what you want to try to do, especially when you're studying, okay, and you read a question like this, is try to answer the question before you get to the answer choices. So think about everything you know about discrete trial teaching, everything you know about incidental teaching, okay, and compare the two. This type of recall is going to strengthen, okay, your knowledge of incidental teaching and discrete trial. Instead of just jumping to the answer choices, okay, and using those as prompts, right, you can start to identify what you know about incidental teaching and discrete trial teaching. So try to answer these questions before you even get to the answer choices, okay? So what do we know about discrete trial teaching? We know it's contrived. We know it's quick. We know it's used to strengthen or teach behavior, okay, and skills. We can deliver reinforcement quickly. What do we know about incidental teaching? We use the natural environment to teach skills, okay? It's uncontrived, right? We just use naturally occurring situations and contingencies, typically to what? Typically to maintain or generalize behavior, okay? So discrete trial teaching, we use it to strengthen and teach. Incidental teaching is great for generalization and maintenance. Okay, so we've talked it out. Now let's go to our answer choices. Incidental teaching allows you to deliver more reinforcement faster. Well, what do we just say about discrete trial teaching? Discrete trial teaching allows you to deliver more reinforcement faster, okay? So it's not an advantage of incidental teaching. Incidental teaching encourages generalization. Absolutely, right? We just said that. Incidental teaching is great for generalization and maintenance. Discrete trial teaching is great for teaching and strengthening. So B is very strong. What about C? Discrete trial teaching is only effective for children under the age of 10. Definitely not. Discrete trial teaching is much slower than incidental teaching. Of course not. Discrete trial teaching is very fast, very rapid. So the best answer here is B. Incidental teaching encourages generalization. Okay, I hope you enjoyed those questions. I'll be back Wednesday with more. Remember, our BCBA exam, practice exam is now out. We're starting that series. So once you pass your RBT exam, come back so you can become a BCBA, all right? Like and subscribe. Any comments or questions, let me know. Check out our study materials, rbtexamreview.com. Other than that, keep working hard, keep studying hard. I will see you soon.